Okay. All right. Let's see. Oh, excellent. Okay. Great. So, greetings from Tokyo. I'm very sorry for. Okay, sorry. I'm very sorry for this impromptu live stream. I didn't make any announcement. I'm really very bad at this YouTube thing because I don't make any announcements. So, I very much apologize. But I wasn't planning on doing this actually, but I wanted to make a quick video regarding the trailer for the upcoming film The Irishman, which is a Martin Scorsese picture. So the trailer just arrived on the internet maybe a few days ago. And so I was very much looking forward to this. And not only because it's a Martin Scorsese picture, but it also has a stellar cast. Of course, you don't need me to say this, but the fact that it has Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Al Pacino, Harvey Keitel, among others, is a cause for celebration amongst fans of Martin Scorsese films, of course, because 3 of the 4 actors that I've mentioned have a relationship with Scorsese that goes way back starting from Mean Streets and beyond. And then for the other actor, of course, Al Pacino, this is marks the beginning of a collaboration with Martin Scorsese. And so just the pedigree that's there, that's being assembled here, the powerhouse names is just through the roof. So I saw the trailer. There was a teaser trailer that was released by Netflix, I think, a few months back, and it was just a black screen with CGI bullets, I think, that were flying through the air after being fired, or cartridges, I think, that were being fired through the air after being fired from a gun or something. And then you'd hear voices, which we assumed were Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, revealing the phrase, I heard you paint houses. Yes, I do. So, but now we get this trailer with clips to see how the footage looks, to see what the whole thing about the de-aging stuff that's going on. That has always been in the news, but we haven't really seen what it looks like until now, or at least we get a taste of it or a glimpse of it in the trailer form. Who knows? I think between now and when the film is set to be released, or at least shown for the first time, which I think is going to be at the New York Film Festival in September, there might be some time to tweak it. But I just wanted to say a few things, and I've looked at a number of reactions online, and I'm very much encouraged by those reactions. And I even know some people, I think I understand, still have some slight reservations, for instance, about the de-aging stuff. In particular, I think the final shots that were revealed in the trailer, Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci at the table, I think there might be some issues with that particular shot. So, and I certainly have those issues, but let me just explain that beforehand, or not before, let me just explain that now, and we'll go from there. So I just wanted to say, first of all, that I want to thank my dear friend Cinevista SI for making a great reaction to the trailer, and it's great to hear his reaction because he's a true fan of Scorsese's works, in particular Goodfellas. So I love Goodfellas as well, but I can't claim to love Goodfellas as much as our dear friend Cinevista SI. He really loves the film Goodfellas. I do too. There are so many moments of Goodfellas that I like, but I think for whatever reason, one of my favorite moments in Goodfellas is, it's a very quiet moment, but it's when they're at after the whole thing with Billy Batts, and they're at the Tommy's mother's house, around the middle of the film, and they're eating, and they're talking about what happened, why they need the knife, and in the excuses that they're giving to Tommy's mother, De Niro, as he's eating, he says hoof. I love the way De Niro says hoof. That's a great moment in a film filled with so many great moments. I'm sorry about that, but in many ways, this film, I'm sorry, the Irishman, what was I talking about? The Irishman trailer was a trailer that our dear friend Cinevista SI spoke about, I think, very positively, and I share many of his thoughts. So if you have a chance, check out Cinevista SI's channel and subscribe, and also leave comments and click the notification bell on his channel, because it's really great, and he just put up the video about The Irishman. I would probably, I would share in his enthusiasm, and I would also say, in addition, that there are a few things that I noticed. Okay, so the first thing is, gosh, Al Pacino looks great. Now, I think there's some de-aging stuff that's going on with some of the shots that he is in, although I can't quite be sure. It's really that it's good with, if there is de-aging with Al Pacino's look, at least as it appears in the trailer, which I understand that there is, it looks really good. Because it's hard to tell. I mean, maybe there's one shot where you see a close-up of his eyes. There might seem to be a little bit of that CGI haze, if you know what I mean. But it's very slight, even if it is there. Which is my way of saying that I think this, when it's applied to Al Pacino, at least when we see it in the trailer, it looks really great. Speaking of Al Pacino, oh man, there's such a kind of energy and swagger in his step, something like that. It just feels so great. There's a quick glimpse of where Jimmy Hoffa's standing up at the table and he just slams his hands on the table. It reminded me so much, like that gesture he gives in The Godfather Part 3, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. I felt some chill when I saw that quick moment there. And there's a kind of cockiness about what he's doing with Jimmy Hoffa. I think at least that's what my sense is. There's a line where Joe Pesci says, I think you're demonstrating a failure to show appreciation, or something like that. And it cuts to Al Pacino, and he gives that little, that a kind of smirk or something. Now, I think that might be a thing with the editing in trailers. You know how sometimes trailers edit things and it doesn't quite work out the same way in the film. But there's something about that juxtaposition between the Joe Pesci line and the way, at least in the trailer, it has the appearance that Al Pacino, Jimmy Hoffa, is reacting to it. I just love that look that he gives. And there's another line that we hear Al Pacino say at the very beginning when he's on the phone, and he says, and De Niro says, glad to meet you. And then Pacino says, glad to meet you too, even if it's over the phone. And I love the way he elongates the word phone. If you listen to the way the word phone is mentioned by Pacino in that moment, there's, that's so great. It's hard to describe why I think that moment is so great. I suppose the best way for me to describe it might be, it might not be the most, it might be an imperfect comparison, and if you think so, I apologize, but I was reminded of, I don't know if you know the film License to Kill, the James Bond film with Timothy Dalton, but there's a moment in that film early on where one of the actors, Benicio del Toro, plays the character called Dario. He's kind of a villain henchman, Dario. And I think the line that he says is about a particular something that happened to one of the characters. And he says, don't worry, we gave her a nice honeymoon. It's just a very plain line. We gave her a nice honeymoon, which is supposed to be a very sinister a line, actually. But the way he enunciates that word honeymoon, it's very weird. And it adds a kind of quirky touch to it. Well, I was reminded of that when I heard Al Pacino say the word phone. There's something a little bit odd and off about the way he pronounces it, which is great, which is really great. That it seems to suggest to me that there might be some playfulness with respect to the way Pacino is going to portray Jimmy Hoffa here, which, if that's the case, then that's going to be very exciting indeed. And I should say also that it seems like, now please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like Al Pacino is not giving a straight-on impersonation of Jimmy Hoffa. There is a certain similarity in physical appearance, don't get me wrong, but they certainly don't look physically alike. But my sense is that it's going to be an impressionistic performance, much like, say, Anthony Hopkins and his portrayal of Nixon in the film Nixon. So that seems to me very exciting, and it seems to open up a whole range of possibility, at least in terms of acting. The other great Joe Pesci, just to see him, first of all, there's a shot where he's in a kind of a nightclub restaurant with red lamps on the table and he's surrounded by his men. I could immediately recall some of those scenes in the restaurants in Goodfellas. But here he is, he's a much older figure, at least the way he's portrayed in that particular shot. And there's something both welcoming and also menacing about the way in which he also speaks his dialogue in that gravelly voice. When he's talking about the rings and all that, and other things, and those glasses, it's just fantastic. It's so great to see this. It's so great to see Joe Pesci in a role like this. And then, before I get to Robert De Niro, I should say also that it's a interesting point because right in the teaser, back in I think February, March of this year, we saw the names in the marquee, and I think Harvey Keitel was listed there as well. So it was Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, and then Harvey Keitel. Here we don't see any mention we don't see any glimpse of Harvey Keitel. So I'm still curious to see, it's so great to see Harvey Keitel in this film, but I'm still anticipating what his actual participation will look like and sound like and feel like. This is, of course, there's a Harvey Keitel connection with the Scorsese filmography. Of course, we have his key role in Last Temptation of Christ, but I think perhaps his key role in Scorsese's filmography is probably Mean Streets. So this is going to be a very interesting thing to see Harvey Keitel and how he is going to be involved, what his involvement will feel like, and how it will affect the proceedings. We didn't get any glimpse of that, so excuse me, that's going to be a little bit of a surprise that perhaps the film is still keeping in its pocket. We also get some glimpses of Anna Paquin, but not many, and I don't think we hear her speak. I think we see her just reacting or just watching Robert De Niro, who is in the foreground, out of focus. But that will be another interesting thing to see how she is part of the proceedings, how she will affect the feel and her contributions, because she's really great. And then we come to Robert De Niro. Now, I would say that there is a moment of kind of brutality and violence with his character when he throws someone through a door and then he shoots him on the street. But there is also a very stoic nature. We see a lot of still shots. We don't see him reacting too much. We see him in that great, iconic De Niro look. There's a particular point where we see a shot of him, I think, in a car that's going through a car wash in slow motion with the water running down the window. Oh, that shot right there alone is just, oh my goodness, what's going on? And so it'll be interesting to see De Niro in these sorts of roles, because remember, even in Goodfellas, his role, I would say, it was really memorable, of course, but it wasn't as centralized as Henry Hill was, Ray Liotta's character, and it wasn't as flashy and over the top as Tommy, as Joe Pesci's character was. So, Jimmy, Robert De Niro, he had his own sort of stoicism about him, but it just, of course, it exploded in its own way, in many ways during the film Goodfellas. Well, I can't help but think that perhaps there might be something similar in terms of character presentation. There might be something in the sense that we're getting slight role reversals here, of course, as well. It seems like he might be giving a more stoic performance here, as he did in Goodfellas, perhaps. But now we get the flashier performance, perhaps, from Al Pacino. Who knows? And maybe we're getting a colder, edgier, yet still menacing, subdued yet menacing performance from Joe Pesci, excuse me. So, which is very interesting. Two things I want to say, and then I'll get to your comments, and then I'll leave you to the rest of your day or evening, wherever. And again, I apologize for bothering you like this. But the first thing was the issue of de-aging. Now, as I sort of referred to at the outset of this, I still have issue with that last shot of De Niro, and also a little glimpse of Joe Pesci as well. It still looks a little bit, but I think it won't be too distracting, or at least I hope it's not, because my sense now is that the film will be focusing on many points in time, not just the young era and the old, the present, older era, I don't know. But it seems like it'll be jumping back and forth in its chronology. And so if that's the case, then perhaps we won't necessarily have to rely so much on looking at this full-on, not super young, but if you know what I mean, something that is obviously stuff where there is a lot more de-aging technology applied versus maybe some other parts of the chronology where maybe we might see some de-aging applied, but not that much. So maybe it's being applied in levels or gradations. And if that's the case, then that gives me more comfort and more food for thought. So there might not necessarily be that stark a difference. But who knows? We haven't seen the film yet, so I don't know, I can't really say with clarity on this point, but that's my impression based on this trailer, is that even if we get even if we get some younger portions of their lives which require a lot of de-aging, my sense is that it won't be the only part of the film that we can sort of hook our interests in. So that even if that stuff is bad, technically, and I'm not saying it's going to be bad, but I'm saying that even if it's bad, technically, then perhaps that won't occupy so much of the film space to be too much of a kind of demerit to the film, if you know what I mean. But even with that point in mind, I should point out that I was also reminded of the film, or for example, the film Once Upon a Time in America, which is the Sergio Leone film from the early 80s, also with Robert De Niro and also Joe Pesci as well in a small role, and with James Woods as well. I should mention that that film is really, it's really great. It's such a masterpiece. It's a tough film to watch. It's really tough and really brutal at times. So please take caution if you haven't seen it yet, because it can be really, really intense. But for those of you who have, you'll know that there is a lot of jumping back and forth in chronology. And we have many actors, or not many, some actors, De Niro included, who are shown in old age makeup. Now, I think when we look at the film, it's very obvious that it's old age makeup. It's very obvious that these are actors portraying older people than their actual ages at the time of the shooting of the film. And so there is a sense of theatricality, at least I feel it when I see the film Once Upon a Time in America. I mean, I know it's De Niro, I know it's De Niro in makeup, and yet his performance, his nuances really shine through, and it becomes part of the performance. So in other words, I know that it's fake when I see it, but that doesn't at all take away from his performance, which I think is brilliant in that film. So if I have that in mind, then I think, well, how is that different from de-aging, right? How is that really different from de-aging? I mean, sure, it's a different application of something other than what the actor or actress provides, right? Because it has to be externally applied, this makeup. For Once Upon a Time in America, it was the old age makeup that was externally applied, physically, of course. With The Irishman, it's a similar principle, I think. It's just applied externally through the image, right? Not applied to the actor directly. But still, I think the principle is the same. The result is, of course, strictly speaking, different in terms of, or opposite in terms of the way chronology works, right? Because in Once Upon a Time in America, the makeup was applied to create the illusion of a character being older than Robert De Niro was at the time of shooting. Whereas with The Irishman, it's the application of this particular technology in order to provide the illusion that Robert De Niro, or the character, is younger than the age at which Robert De Niro is portraying at the time of filming. But the principle, I think, is the same. In other words, if I can look at Once Upon a Time in America and I can see the performance, despite the fact that maybe deep down in my head, I know that the makeup is fake. And perhaps when I look at it, I kind of see, yeah, this is not really an actor of the same age as this character, but rather it's a younger Robert De Niro with makeup so therefore I know it's makeup, right? Even though I have that notion in my head, I still can believe the performance. So I think the same is potentially possible for this particular aspect of The Irishman. So if that's the case, then I'm very happy to withhold my judgment until I actually see the film, because again, I think the principle is the same. And so if the principle is the same, at least potentially so, then I think there's much room for this de-aging stuff to work. And if we remember that it's part of the performance, I know it's very difficult, and even for me too, it's hard for me to remember that, because there's so much emphasis placed on the de-aging. There's so much of it we see, and there is something. There's the phrase "uncanny valley," and I know that's used a lot, but it is obviously unnatural. It does feel unnatural, and it does feel like a byproduct of modern filmmaking with today's technology. I totally get that, but I I do believe also that the principle is justifiably so, at least the same or similar at least. So, if we can hold to the belief that the principle is the same, which is that it's part of the performance, and even if it looks fake, it still can blend into the performance if done correctly, or if the performer is able to use it correctly, then I think there is much potential for this technology as it's applied here, even though the end result might look fake. Okay, so I still hold out hope, but I still am reserving judgment because don't get me wrong. Excuse me. Pardon me. I'm sorry about that. Don't get me wrong. Even if a performance is great, sometimes really, really poor makeup can get in the way of an otherwise great performance. I am fully prepared for that as well. So that possibility still exists with these portions of the film The Irishman. But yes, I hold out hope, and I use the example of Once Upon a Time in America as a kind of semi-justification, perhaps, at least at this point in time. So let's wait and see, I suppose. Speaking of Once Upon a Time in America, talk about that opening shot in the trailer with the telephone ringing, right? If you've seen Once Upon a Time in America, you know that there is a very significant point about a ringing telephone and how it rings. Well, we still get we get a little snippet of a ringing telephone at the beginning of this trailer for The Irishman. Granted, it's not as long as how the sound is used in the film Once Upon a Time in America, but I think there's a subliminal connection, maybe more than subliminal, who knows. It does feel like there is some kind of connection that might be there. Well, we'll see. Again, this is, I know, the trailer. Who knows? Maybe the film might be different, but still, when I heard that, I immediately thought, wow, this is just like Once Upon a Time in America. So, among other things I noticed in the trailer. So, yes, so this is very exciting. With some reservations, yes, but again, I will withhold my actual judgment, I suppose, until I see the film in action, as it were. So that was my take on the Irishman trailer today, which is August 3rd, 2019. So let's see here. Let me just go to the comments here, and then I will call it a day. Let's see. So, Javid Malik, hello. Joshua Brunstein, my dear friend, hello. Kia, greetings. Hello. Mark. Oh, great. Have you seen, Mark asks, have you seen the new trailer for the new film, The Lighthouse? Yes, I have. I have seen that trailer as well, and I am like, wow, this is so cool, and wow, what's this film about? And that's, I think, those are two great feelings to have when one watches a trailer like that. That looks intense. That looks really intense. Wow, that is a film to watch as well, The Lighthouse, based on that trailer. Whoa. Romero, hello from Toledo, Ohio. Hello, greetings. Anita Bong hit 2.0, hello. Dustin, hello. Bronson13, hello. And Joshua asks, where do we stand on this period of Scorsese? So this period is the current period. I'll be perfectly honest. It's my feelings on the current period of Scorsese. It's like it's good to great, but it's. Is it really, really as great as, let's say, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas? I think the jury is still out. And perhaps, even if his works aren't as good as, let's say, the heights of Taxi Driver, still they're very good. I mean, it would be so difficult to be expected to make a film that is as good as Taxi Driver every single time. I mean, gosh, but Yeah, you mentioned, Josh says in a separate comment, you say you rewatched Shutter Island recently and find it to be potentially his best film. Yet a film like Hugo is a very underwhelming picture. That's interesting. I have, while I don't necessarily share as strong a sentiment, perhaps, in the film Shutter Island, I still think it's a really great work. Hugo, I think, is good. I don't know if I'd consider it great yet, but I still haven't spent as much time with that film, to be perfectly honest. And so I think it's really good. Is it a masterpiece? Let me think about that. But it's yes, and I think. Oh, here, Akashdeep Banerjee, hello, says, I think it's going to be another classic. And you also say, Hugo is a different kind of picture. If you put it contextually, it's actually pretty good. That's actually a very good way of putting it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Akashdeep, thank you. Matt S., hello, Matt. And you say, I love seeing Pesci back as a mean-looking tough guy. Yes, there is a tone here. It feels almost like it's like you had Tommy in Goodfellas and you had Nicky Santoro in Casino, and then you have him here in The Irishman. A lot of people said that his character in Casino was very similar to that in Goodfellas. So I disagree. I think there are so many differences between Nicky and Tommy, and I think Nicky is in many ways much more of an adult than Tommy was. And here we're getting really cool, tough, and, as I said, subdued Pesci, but in a almost like a leadership role here as a boss. So really cool. Damn Fool Idealistic Crusader, my dear friend. Nice to catch you talking about License to Kill when I enter. I think this trailer definitely has major Goodfellas vibes, and you're right to mention Stone's Nixon, which has a similar sort of feel. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, License to Kill. Oh gosh, this isn't meant to be a discussion on License to Kill, but I think I don't think it's my favorite Bond film. It's one that I really. Let me put it this way. I think there are moments in that film. I think it's an imperfect film, but there are moments in that film where I think are really genius. There are a lot of genius moments in the film, which is overall, I think, imperfect, but it tried something new in the Bond universe, and that alone I have to admire. Yes. Right, I love that line where Dalton says, I hope you don't snore, Q. Gosh, that's great. Anyway, Terminator 101, hello, my dear friend. Yes, Terminator 101, yes, the podcast. I cannot wait. Christopher Rourke, hello. You say, I'm not sure about the CGI faces, though. It might feel off. Maybe the trailer isn't the polished final product, though. Yeah, that's a good point. I remember you remember the film Tron Legacy? I think that was the film Tron Legacy, this Tron sequel, and there's that Jeff Bridges where he played Clue. I don't know if you've seen Tron Legacy. I saw Tron Legacy, and I think I really love Tron. I still don't get that whole Clue thing, to be perfectly honest. If you know the first film Tron and you know that Clue appears in that film, I still don't get that connection about how Clue figures into the second film. But that's a completely different story. I'm sorry, but granted that it was early on in the technology. There's something, I think, like, it's obviously fake, especially now when one sees that in Tron sequel, but there's that universe, it's the cyber universe, as it were, so there's something maybe acceptable to that. There's a CGI look, and maybe it's acceptable given the universe that we're in that particular film. Here, you're right, it still is a bit iffy, potentially. I'm encouraged, though, also by the fact that, again, it seems like this technology is also applied to Al Pacino and the way he looks in the trailer. And if that's the case, boy, it looks great, because I think Al Pacino looks so great in this trailer. I think for me, I think he stole the trailer for me. And there are moments where we see Jimmy Hoffa's face cloaked half in shadow, maybe De Niro's seen out of focus in some places. And so perhaps these little elements using darkness, shadow, focus, things in foreground in a way that Martin Scorsese can as a master filmmaker technician that he is, maybe this will help in maintaining the illusion, if you know what I mean. But who knows? We'll see. But I don't disagree with you, my friend Christopher. As I mentioned, I do have similar reservations, at least with respect to the trailer. But Joshua says, yeah, I just don't get what Scorsese is getting from casting these older performers just to de-age them. He's such a good director of actors. What's the larger idea behind this casting? That's a good point. But Joshua, I would, again, say then, what was the principle behind casting, let's say, Robert De Niro to play the young adult Robert De Niro, not the child in Once Upon a Time in America, but the young adult Robert De Niro, and also the older Robert De Niro in the contemporary times. And the same was true for James Woods. Why not cast older actors there? Why do that for that particular film? And we're going to have to see The Irishman to see if we can sift through the film and to figure out what the principle was behind that. I mean, it's a really good question. I mean, is it a vanity? Is it a move towards fulfilling the vanity of these actors? I don't know. I mean, I don't think that's the case. And we have to remember, too, that there must have been something, and I want to hope that it was something other than monetary, that convinced Joe Pesci to come back. Because Joe Pesci, too, his character does have the de-aging stuff applied to it. You can tell because of the last shot between him and Robert De Niro at the table. So even his character undergoes a de-aging stuff, the technology. But then your question is still valid. What's the principle behind it? And so let's think, what was the principle behind, or what could have been the principle behind casting the actors to play their older selves in Once Upon a Time in America? And I think it has to do maybe with there's a tiredness, there is a real connectivity that occurs that it feels more immediate, I would say, even despite the fact that even in that film, I would suggest that the makeup doesn't look 100% real, because I know in my head that it's not real. But still, those scenes that we see, especially De Niro, and he's pensive and regretful in his old age, looking back and thinking back, there is a real connection that I feel with that character. And so there is a kind of, how should I put it, looking back. But is the same kind of principle potentially there as well when we're dealing with a reverse chronological effect, right? Because when we're dealing with old age, thinking back, that is a very inherently dramatic thing, right? Regret, melancholy, all this stuff plays in. But the same is not true necessarily for one in one's younger years, right? Because we don't have the hindsight element. There is more youth, and there's more quote-unquote potential for inexperience. So that dramatic hook is not inherently in that reverse chronology. So this is still very much a mystery to me as well, although I would say that my first point with Once Upon a Time in America, the idea of the connectivity that one has between the spectator and the performer on the screen might be the main hook. At least that might be the hook, at least as I see it being applied in the film Once Upon a Time in America. But as far as the dramatic hook is concerned, because we're dealing with reverse chronology, that I'm not sure yet, and I have to wait until the film arrives in order to make a better comment on that. I should remark too, I don't know how you feel about the film Saving Private Ryan, but there's a similar thing that goes on with Saving Private Ryan, and I don't want to go into too much detail lest I spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. I don't want to spoil it, but let me just say that if you recall in the film Saving Private Ryan, there was a particular actor who's played in he's young and he's in the war scenes, and then his character is seen much older in later in other scenes, in contemporary scenes as well. And it's obvious that the character is the same, but they are played by different actors. One is the younger actor of that character, one is the older actor of that character. I would suggest that my connectivity with the older actor is not as strong as my connectivity that I feel with the younger actor during the war scenes. And so because of that lack of connectivity, I find that those contemporary scenes don't hold as much power to me as much as I feel a connectivity and power with, let's say, those scenes that I mentioned in the film Once Upon a Time in America, in the context of that film. So perhaps that might be something to it. But again, I'm just merely speculating here without necessarily seeing anything further. But again, we'll have to see, Joshua, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts and read your review. And so yes. And you also mentioned a great comment here. It has me hoping Irishman will be some sort of comment on the films that made these three men so iconic, and now expired sense of masculinity they embodied for so many decades. Perhaps that might be it. There might be something. Yes, he and also Scorsese as well, because. Right. I mean, they are at a certain age in their lives, and so perhaps this is a way for them to look back as well. So maybe I don't know, there's this idea of when you look back on something, you always look at it through a kind of rose-tinted lens or rose-tinted glasses or something. So maybe there might be this glorified dreamlike sense to the flashback sequences, which might lend itself to a sense of dramatic, purposely applied sense of dramatic falseness, if you know, or a kind of fantasy element. And so maybe if there's a fantasy element to the flashback sequences, then that might make the CGI de-aging technology a part of that process, to add to this sense of fantasy. Who knows? Again, I'm just speculating, but anyway. Damn fool idealistic crusader. I suppose it's De Niro. Hello? I think I dropped out. Am I back okay? Sorry about that. I think my connection dropped out for a bit, so hopefully I'm back. Good. Let's see. Sorry about that. So I was, let's see. Melinda, my dear friend. Oh gosh, Melinda, you're great. All my best to you. My love, and I just hope you're doing well, my dear friend Melinda. Our dear friend Melinda is the best. Mark, what's up, y'all? Matt S. I can get over the de-aging thing if the story keeps me engaged. A great point, Matt. A great point indeed. Jambo Shango and the Randy Moles movie show. Oh, you are the best. Oh gosh, I hope you're well, my friends. Jambo Shango. I should say Jambo Shango is one of the great channels. I love Jambo Shango. Oh gosh. Matt Miller, hello. Raph Roder, Orson Welles. Yes, of course. Yes, of course. That's the supreme example. Thank you so much for this. Orson Welles, yes. Citizen Kane. Yes. Applying makeup to look older. Now, of course, the same issue still remains with Once Upon a Time in America, in that he never applied makeup to look necessarily super young. Maybe there was makeup to give the impression of being younger than he was at the time, although I'm not quite sure. But it wasn't like here, the vast time difference that I'm sensing that this film, The Irishman, will have. But still, yes, the point is similar. So yes, excellent. Yes, IGJL Express. Hi, thoughts on the Lighthouse trailer? Yes, I did mention that earlier, and I think it looks very wild and interesting, and I have no idea what it's about, so it's really intriguing. Jake H, hello. Yes, Jake H says, I thought they said they would go back as far with the CG as when Pacino and De Niro were in their 30s. Yes, that's a good point. That maybe there was some mention of that early on. I don't quite recall. And so if that's the case, that should be interesting. Although, I don't know. I don't know. And again, even if they do, I don't know how much of the film will be devoted to those particular scenes. And if so, I don't know what kind of film style will be employed. Yes, I should have looked this up. Do you know? Who is the director of photography for The Irishman? Does anyone know offhand? I should have looked this up. I apologize for not doing so. Who is this? Let's see. Let me just try to find those details here. Okay, so hold on. My computer is slow. Okay, so it's Rodrigo Prieto. So it's the filmographer, it's the cinematographer from Silence and Wolf of Wall Street, right? So great. Okay, that looks great. And also, did right? Let me see. Did he do? Yes, he did also the film. Do you know the film Lust Caution? Ang Lee film Lust Caution. Wow, talk about an intense. It's a very intense work. It's certainly not for everyone. There are some very graphic scenes in that film, so I'm not recommending that film to everyone, but that is an intense work indeed. And also Brokeback Mountain too. Oh gosh. But oh man, the look of the film in the trailer was just awesome. And let's see here. So I'm sorry about this. Yes. Oh, okay, Lust Caution, yes. That's a film that I don't think gets enough attention. I don't know, it seems to have dropped off, kind of dropped off the critical radar, in terms of discussions on Ang Lee's filmography for some reason. At least that's my sense. I'm not sure exactly, but maybe it was because it was made so close to Brokeback Mountain, which got a lot of attention and still does, rightfully so. And also maybe because of its subject matter. I mean, it's a very, it's certainly a subject matter, and it's the way things that it depicts. It's very, it's not for everyone, that's for sure. But yes, I think actually in many ways, Joshua, you say I think it's Ang Lee's most interesting film. Maybe not his best, but I think it's a masterpiece. I certainly agree with you. I agree with you 100% on that. It is his most interesting work, I think. And it's one that I still have failed to fully unpack. Oh gosh, that is such a remarkable work in so many ways. But I'm sorry, why was I? Oh yes, of course, the cinematographer, of course. So, and IGJL expresses Silence should get a Criterion release. Yes. Very interesting work, Silence. So, yes, very interesting indeed. Sorry, I'm sort of. Maybe it's the heat. I don't know how it is where you are in the world, but here in Tokyo, it is hot. It is very hot. So, gosh. All right. So anyway, I think I will just start to wind down. I was planning to speak for only about 20 minutes or so, and I see we're approaching 50. So, gosh, thank you so much. So I'll just, so if I skipped your comment, I apologize. Let me just try to address. If I've skipped it, I apologize. I really didn't mean to, but in the hopes of not skipping over a comment, let me just look over this one more time as a last minute effort to make sure I caught as many as I can. And let's see. So Jake H says, at least we are getting Scorsese and Pacino together finally. Yes, that's one of the great selling points of this film, I think, is the collaboration between Al Pacino and Martin Scorsese. It's certainly interesting. I haven't seen the film yet, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I understand, features Al Pacino as well, and Leonardo DiCaprio, and Leonardo DiCaprio, of course, has his work with Martin Scorsese, and so it's great to see. I'm not so sure about Al Pacino's recent filmography work. I really haven't seen a lot of his recent work, but there's a film that is going to be released, I think, by Arrow Video very soon. I want to say this month. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the William Friedkin film Cruising. Talk about a powerhouse performance, almost to the point of high octane volatility. That is a really textured, layered, and in many ways quite a smart performance, and I can't wait to see it. I actually pre-order. I don't usually pre-order Arrow releases, but that I had to pre-order. It's not that's not a film for everyone, that's for sure. But talk about a great Pacino performance there. Wow, and talk about nuance. Wow. Oh, all right. And let's see. Oh gosh. Infametius, hello. Infametius, nice to see you, my dear friend. Great. Yes. And yes. Oh, X24 Rider, hello, good morning. Good to see you. And there's a discussion here about Criterion and Scorsese, and possible releases from that one would like to see from Criterion, which is always great. And yes, so all right, so let me now start to wind down. Again, if I've skipped your comment, I apologize. And once again, I apologize for this impromptu live stream. I really should plan these more in advance, but I have to apologize for that. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to change. I'll try to be a better planner, but hopefully, I hope you don't mind too much. It's the story. It's the same thing with the frog and the scorpion. I can't help it. It's my nature. So I'll try to change it, but just please understand in the meantime. Again, I apologize. I ask for your patience. But so yes. So here we go, and let me just wind down here. So yes, Roberto 2653. Hello. It's nice to see you. Darumo, I can't see your message, but if you're there, hello. And let's see. I hope I haven't skipped anyone. Yes. Let's see. Okay. Again. Oh gosh, great discussions here as always. I can't believe it. It's just, you guys are really great. You always come up with these great points that Oh, if I failed to mention it, hello, Kia, hello. I hope you're well. I think I mentioned hello, but if not, please forgive me. I hope you're well. And Jordan, hello, hello. X24 Rider, yes, please extend my compliments and my greetings to your wife as well. Please tell her I said hello. I hope you are all well. I don't know what the weather's like where you are now, but here in Tokyo, it is so hot. Oh, very hot. It's almost unbearable. So just if it's hot where you are, just make sure you're drinking lots of water. It's not good to get dehydrated in this heat. And yes, okay, so just to wind down here, I want to thank you very much for your time, and I want to thank you very much for your time and your comments and your input and enthusiasm as always, my friends. So, and you always come up with great things to talk about, and so it's so many great things. It's so hard for me to keep up. So thank you very much for always teaching me a lot about cinema and just keeping me, how should I put it, keeping me inspired as you always do. So I haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood yet. I'm looking forward to it. Unfortunately, what happened was I was actually accidentally, I was reading something quite innocently, and I was reading an article quite innocently, and the article unfortunately spoiled the ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for me. So I actually know, I haven't seen the film, but I know what happens at the end. So it's just a little bit of a shame, but oh well, I'm not too, I'm not too strict about that sort of thing, to be perfectly honest. I don't mind being spoiled by reviews or by commentaries, written commentaries about the film. I know how these things are, and I think, and that was my fault more than anything else. You know, if I really didn't want to be spoiled, then I should have had the self-discipline and not read the thing to begin with. So that was completely my fault. So I don't blame the writer of that article at all. But yes, I do know what happens at the end. So it seems like it's going to be a very interesting watch. And I do also have a sense that the film is not just about its ending, but it feels like it's going to be or maybe meditative, maybe, I'm not sure, but that's the anticipation that I have about the film. But yeah, you know, that's one of the things too about living in Japan. You know, there's a delay in releases of films sometimes, and so it's hard to be patient. You know, there was a delay, for instance, in the release of the film, the Luca Guadagnino film Suspiria. I think the film was released in North America around Halloween 2018. So that would have been October 2018, I think. Well, here in Japan, it was released, I think, at the end of January. So I had to wait, you know, October, November, December. I had to wait about 4 months until I could see Suspiria. And by that time, it already went through the whole thing about, it's the anticipation and the hype and the divided critics and fans and all that. So I already got a sense of that before I walked into the theater. So, and the same was true for, gosh, I can't begin. Don't get me started on Twin Peaks: The Return, because there was a delay between its broadcast on, was it Showtime, and also its broadcast here in Japan. And the broadcast in Japan was actually later than its release on Blu-ray. So in fact, I had to wait until its release on Blu-ray before I could watch The Return. So I can't begin to tell you the utter that required so much self-control on my part that I think I just was so on edge. I was so paranoid. I didn't want to be spoiled by anything, and so I was just making sure not to zone out everything about Twin Peaks and any discussion about that during that period. And it was tough too, because there'd be some podcasts that I would listen to, and they would rather innocently start talking about Twin Peaks Return. I'd suddenly have to turn it off and just try to shut out everything. So that was an intense period of some months, and it was very frustrating. It was very hard to be patient, and believe me, there were some times when I was so tempted to click on an article and just read a synopsis about what happened and all this and stuff. And I did hear, fortunately, I was able to block out any specifics, but I did hear, of course, some of the rumblings that occurred at the end of the last episode. And so that was the point when I really had to block everything out, and it was it was a really tough time, actually. And so I was able to watch it later, and that was the thing about Twin Peaks: The Return. I was so impatient about watching that stuff that I actually sat down and I nearly binge watched all of it over the course of a few days. And I think that is a work that really should have been seen by me initially in episodic form, and to be able to watch episode by episode with a week in between, for the most part anyway. That's how I really would have loved to have seen it. But again, I didn't have enough self-control to be able to do that when I got the Blu-ray in the mail, or the Blu-ray set in the mail. And so but yeah, so why am I bringing this up? Oh yeah, so Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it hasn't been released in Tokyo here yet. It's going to be released actually at the end of August, so I do have a few weeks left. But as I mentioned, it was my fault. I actively clicked on a link to an article, and I actively read an article, and it revealed a particular aspect of the film to me, and so that was my fault. But I do know what happens to certain aspects of the plot, but there are some other points that I think are still not clear to me, so I'm looking forward to that very much. But the reason why I bring it up is because in living in Japan, sometimes there is this delay, and so I have to just be sure that I have enough self-control not to click on any article or watch a YouTube video review or something before I actually watch the film. So it's a little bit of a tough thing, but oh well. It's a very small issue in the grand scheme of life, I understand, but oh well, c'est la vie, as it were. So Joshua has a great love for the film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I see, which makes me even more excited for the film. Josh Brunsting, you are a great, like, if you say a film is good, then I believe you. If you say a film is good, I believe you. So I trust your taste in film 1,000%, my friend. And Melinda, good night, my dear friend. And let's see. Oh, Jordan says, my friend, I'm going to see Joe Bob Briggs speak at a local theater. Have you watched or read any of this? Of course, Joe Bob Briggs. I love Joe Bob Briggs. So, he did a lot of those introductory clips for the genre films and stuff on TV. So many great things. I love Joe Bob Briggs. My favorite, or one of my favorite Joe Bob Briggs' moments is, I don't know if you know, Friday the 13th. There is a documentary. I forget what disc it's on. I forget, but Joe Bob Briggs is featured on a documentary about the Friday the 13th series franchise, making of or something. I forget what it was exactly, but he's being interviewed and he's talking about the series as a whole and some of the deaths, and he talks, and I'm so glad, in that documentary there wasn't any mention made of this particular moment in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, but Joe Bob Briggs was the one who mentioned it, right? It was the hitchhiker on the side of the road eating the banana, which is one of my favorite moments in that film. I know slasher films aren't for everyone. I know that some people think that they're dreck, that they are just a waste of time. I get that. So, I'm not going to convince you, and I don't mean to. But Friday the 13th, the final chapter, the hitchhiker on the side of the road eating the banana. Thank goodness that Joe Bob Briggs mentioned it the way he did in that particular documentary. So, yes, so I do know Joe Bob Briggs, and I respect him so much. So, because of his contributions to the landscape of cinema, in particular, for example, his mentioning of the hitchhiker on the side of the road eating a banana in Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Which is great because it wasn't even the final chapter, right? So, that's the thing also. Isn't the next two Halloween films were announced, right? And the third one was announced as being like, I forget the title. It's like Halloween Ends. And whenever you have a horror film that has the word end or final, like Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, now we have Halloween Ends, you know that it's not the end. You know it's not the final one. But, right, if it makes money, right, it's not going to be the end. So, yes, but sorry about this. Yeah, so now a lot of people are is it Halloween Kills? I don't know what's going on with Halloween. It isn't that there's that it's kind of like that trend with titles. They're kind of clever titles. Like the Star Trek films. The bad robot Star Trek films do that as well. Like Star Trek Into Darkness is an example of that. You know what I mean? I can't quite explain it, but it kind of swerves the title in a way that is grammatically correct, but it wasn't a way that we understood the title to read until this particular reading of it. And I think Halloween Ends is something similar to that, or I don't know, but Star Trek Into Darkness. Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, gosh. Yes. Yeah, a lot of people are... Oh, Man v. Film, hello. Nice to see you. I'm a big fan of your work. So, the last Tarantino film I watched is my favorite. His filmography is that strong. So I wonder what film that is. The last Tarantino, did you leave a comment? Oh gosh, what was that last film you saw? Oh gosh, this is gonna keep me up at night. Oh gosh, what was that last film you saw, Man v. Film? I'd love to know. Was his favorite? His filmography is that strong. Okay. Bailey, my dear friend Bailey, hello, nice to see you. Let's see, Twin Peaks: The Return was better watching many episodes together. I didn't binge it all. I watched 3 or 4 episodes at a time once there were that many available. Interesting. Very interesting. Gosh, there's so many... don't get me started on The Return. Wow. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, gosh. And Lizard Man, hello. It's nice to see you, my friend. I hope you're doing well. And... yes, and then, yes, the discussion is also... Jordan is picking up the discussion about Joe Bob Briggs. Although I love... it wasn't his quote per se, but I love how... oh gosh, why am I blanking on his name? I'm blanking on his name, so I am gonna... oh yes, Harry Bromley Davenport is the filmmaker who is behind the film Extro. And I have mentioned it before, but I think that his interview on the film Extro and Extro 2 and Extro 3, I think is one of the great interviews. It's so refreshing to hear him almost bash his own work. and so it's really great, and he has a great refreshing tone to his interview. It's not stuffy or anything like that. It's very down to earth, and a lot of what he says is actually on point about his own work. But he says. He hasn't seen Extro 2, except he caught it on TV once, or at least he watched it all the way up to his credit, and then he turned it off or something like that. But he says, he saw the film, or at least part of the film, when it was introduced by Joe Bob Briggs, and then he quotes, or he recollects that Joe Bob Briggs described Extra 2 as saying, well, and he gives it a kind of this thick accent, but he says, now, what is Harry Bromley Davenport saying in that interview? He says, now, this is how he recollects Joe Bob Briggs describing Extra 2 on TV. He says, now, we are really in the toilet. Extra 2. So, yes, Joe Bob Briggs has a stamp on a lot of places in cinema, apparently. So, well, good job. So, I hope you have fun with that Joe Bob Briggs talk. Great. Okay, so, and Michael M. Howdy. Hello. Greetings from Tokyo. I hope you're doing well. And so, okay, so let me now wind down this chat because we're approaching over an hour. So sorry for this impromptu session. Please forgive me. But again, it was just my way of trying to share some thoughts that I had about the trailer for the film, The Irishman. And if I missed your comment, oh, Eric, hello. Thank you. It's nice to see you, my dear friend. I hope you're well. And so... by the way, Eric, I may have mentioned it before, but it's worth repeating. I love your avatar picture. It's really great, really wonderful. Gosh, I love it. I love it. I'm sorry, Dave, but oh gosh, what was I saying? So yes, so this was just my way of trying to talk about. The trailer for the film The Irishman, which is scheduled to be released later this year, and that was the occasion that brought me here. So again, I apologize for your time, and I want to thank you very much for your time, and hopefully we can chat again very soon. And so in the meantime, my friends, please be well. Take good care of yourselves, take good care of your friends and family, and just enjoy yourselves and have fun at the movies. So take care, and I look forward to talking to you again very soon, my friends. So cheers. All right, thank you very much. Have a good one, guys. It's great talking to you. And we're out. So I will see you again. Take care.